Donald Trump se sintió muy herido hace unos días y todos tenemos que escucharlo. Porque después de que la Casa Blanca instruyó a todos los medios para que bloquearan los abucheos que Donald Trump tuvo dentro del US Open, Donald Trump fue abucheado tan fuerte que cada pantalla que estaba transmitiendo el US Open podía escucharlo en todo Estados Unidos. Fue absolutamente hilarante y para aumentarlo, Donald Trump perdió la cabeza completamente por esto. Y ahora está publicando furiosamente, negando haber sido abucheado. Todo esto dentro de una serie de tweets completamente delirantes. Ahora, antes de entrar en este espectáculo del US Open, que salió absolutamente mal para Donald Trump, y terminó con él colapsando haciendo publicaciones sin sentido, quiero comenzar con otro espectáculo que está por salir dentro de Baltimore, por el cual Donald Trump fue criticado por el gobernador Wes Monroe. Y esta contundente respuesta justo aquí.
That the president, when you're looking at the big, beautiful bill, it actually cut $30 million of funding for violence prevention programs that are happening in the city of Baltimore and across the state of Maryland. And when I first came on board, I was very clear that public safety was going to be our #1 priority. And we have made historic investments in local law enforcement, historic investments in technologies and making sure that if someone commits a violent crime with a handgun, we want them in handcuffs in 24 hours. So the work is happening. And actually, if you're looking at the same time period of this DC occupation, this federal surge, if you look at assaults with a deadly weapon, they've actually increased in D.C. by 8%, in Baltimore have decreased by 10%, and on every other major indicator, from homicides to carjackings, you say that Baltimore has actually had the same type of drop as Washington, D.C. has had during this period, and we didn't mobilize the National Guard for it.
Well, it seems like the president is not backing down on this policy. In fact, I want to show you a post. This was posted yesterday. President Trump shared this on his social media account. It's directed at Chicago, and it reads, quote, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning, and Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War." Illinois Governor Pritzker called this a threat. Would you go so far as to call this a threat?
I call it a threat. I call it embarrassing. I would call it performative. And I do want to be clear about some of the stats. When people talk about how we watched a decrease because of the National Guard, let's be clear about some of the stats. That the National Guard are responsible during this occupation for 744 cubic yards of mulch spread, 886 bags of trash collected, 270 feet of fence painted. You know what we don't have stats on? How many illegal guns has the National Guard seized? How many drug busts has the National Guard done? How
and
many
yet
arrests?
Crime is down in D.C.
Oh, as it is in Baltimore. And in fact, if you're looking at the crime numbers in Baltimore, they're down around the same percentage from D.C. during the surge. And we did not have to ask these citizen soldiers to give up their lives and ask the American people to pay well over $1 million a day so we could have fences painted.
Tenemos que evitar completamente que Donald Trump se adueñe de la narrativa y que les haga creer a todos que él es el único capaz de mantener seguros a los estadounidenses. Los demócratas deberían estar ganando en este tema, dentro de Washington, dentro de Baltimore, dentro de Nueva York. En todo el país, los alcaldes demócratas se han dado cuenta que dentro de sus estados la criminalidad simplemente se ha reducido antes de que Donald Trump haga lo que sea. Porque sí, que la criminalidad se haya reducido en estos estados no tiene absolutamente nada que ver con que Donald Trump haya mandado a estos matones que él tiene. Este no es un plan de política real y no tiene ningún objetivo que lograr. Donald Trump solo quiere intimidar y sentar precedentes para finalmente poder declarar una ley marcial y convertirse en algo así como un rey sobre América. Eso es lo que él quiere hacer ahora mismo. Ese es el objetivo de él, pero por esa misma razón los demócratas tienen que estar respondiéndole directamente. Ahora, por supuesto que vimos a muchas personas responderle a Donald Trump en este espectáculo que montó dentro del US Open. Antes de entrar en Donald Trump negando haber sido abucheado, tenemos que hablar de los verdaderos abucheos y lo fuerte que fueron. Miren, por favor. Ahora, eso fue obvio, ¿verdad? No puedes negar que estabas cantando el himno nacional. Donald Trump aparece en la pantalla gigante y todos comienzan a abuchearlo. Y él ya no puede negar esto porque eso es simplemente la verdad. Porque cada titular sobre el US Open habla de cómo Donald Trump termina siendo abucheado. Incluso el grupo de prensa de la Casa Blanca tiene un titular de Donald Trump siendo abucheado. Bueno, ¿y cómo está respondiendo Donald Trump? Como siempre lo hace, sin ninguna prueba de nada. Rapid Response 47, la cuenta oficial de la Casa Blanca, respondió: todo lo que hacen estos perdedores de noticias falsas es mentir porque sus cerebros del tamaño de un guisante han sido destruidos irreversiblemente por el síndrome de odio a Trump. Así fue como se transmitió en televisión. Nota los aplausos. Ahora, yo no te puedo transmitir el clip de EXPONE dentro de YouTube porque esta es información de ellos y yo no puedo subirla a mi canal. Pero solo es un clip de Donald Trump siendo completamente abucheado. Incluso la Casa Blanca publicó un clip de Donald Trump siendo abucheado. Y aunque sugirieran que hay un clip del US Open, la transmisión hecha por ESPN que no te muestra a Donald Trump siendo completamente abucheado, tú no puedes escuchar absolutamente nada porque estos medios fueron instruidos para eliminar todo el volumen, o sea, todo el sonido de abucheos, para que simplemente la gente no se dé cuenta de que Donald Trump está siendo bucheado en todos lados. O sea, lo que hicieron básicamente es poner ruido de público falso, o sea, públicos que tengan de otros partidos, y silenciar el micrófono que captaba el audio de lo que realmente estaba pasando en el US Open. Le dijeron que Donald Trump no puede ser abucheado. ¿Por qué? Porque está en una administración fascista. Ahora, es importante señalar que Donald Trump diciendo a los medios que no puede ser abucheado no es lo mismo que enviar a sus matones en masa de forma ilegal a las ciudades. Pero ambas cosas son importantes para notar hasta qué punto es capaz de llegar Donald Trump en esta toma de poder. Si el querido líder quiere hacer ilegal que la gente la abuchee en la calle, yo creo que Estados Unidos está avanzando en un régimen autoritario. Es tan irónico que la administración de Donald Trump se pasó quejando por años de que no, el Joe Biden, Barack Obama. Es tan irónico que la administración de Donald Trump se quejó por años de la libertad de expresión, que no permitían otras personas que la gente se exprese como quiera y que ellos sí permitían. Se quejaron de Joe Biden, se quejaron de Barack Obama y se quejan de cualquier gobierno que según ellos limitaban la libertad de expresión, y lo que están haciendo ellos es limitar el pensamiento de la gente. O sea, si tú piensas a favor de Donald Trump, todo cool, pero si tú llegas a dar una opinión contraria a lo de Donald Trump, estás cometiendo un acto ilegal. Esto sí es impedir la libertad de expresión y esto es lo que está haciendo la administración de Donald Trump. Quiero que le prestes atención a este clip de Tammy Duckworth. Mira, por favor.
Vice President Vance says there aren't plans to send in troops. Do you have concrete indication now that there are plans to do so?
Well, let's make it clear. The President of the United States essentially just declared war on a major city in his own nation. This is not normal, Margaret. This is not acceptable behavior. No, we don't have any indications of them getting ready to send troops into Chicago. In fact, I was out at Great Lakes base yesterday, Naval Training Base, and they were able to confirm that the only assistance they've been requested to provide is just office space for ICE. But that there are no barracks, no detention facilities, none of that is being requested or prepared in order to support troops into Chicago.
So, so then is this just, social media trash talk? When you say he's declaring war, is this tongue in cheek?
I think he's renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. And did he not just say that Chicago will find out what it means to be at war? I take what the President of the United States says very seriously, because that is the respect you have to give to the office. And if that's what he's declaring, then let me make it clear. It would be an illegal order to declare war on a major city, any city within the United States by the President of the United States.
Senator, I know you just mentioned you went out to the Great Lakes Naval Training Station, I should say, and you said the military leadership said they'll only get office space, ICE cannot bring in lethal munitions, and the resources will not be diverted from military training. So all of that together, did you breathe a sigh of relief and say this won't have a real impact on the military?
Well, we're going to make sure that there's not an impact on the military. We need to make sure that as you know, Great Lakes Naval Training Base is where every single recruit in the United States Navy goes through to get their basic training, and then later on some advanced training. We need to make sure that not a single dollar, not a single penny of the resources that they have that should be directed towards training our nation's sailors and making them ready to do their jobs. None of that money needs to be diverted in order to support ICE or any of Donald Trump's political theater efforts. We need to focus on making sure we turn out the very best sailors we possibly can out of the base.
So in terms of how Democrats are responding to this rhetoric, the Chicago Tribune faulted Governor Pritzker for his threats to, quote, not stand idly by if the guard went in. They wrote, what does that threat actually mean? How about a conversation before the action or the response? Because it's all potentially harmful to collective health. It sounds like there's a lot of tension here. Is there an opportunity to work with the administration to avoid making this worse?
Well, they've not responded to any of our requests. I mean, I'll give you a very concrete example. Senator Durbin, myself, Senator Schneider, Congressman Schneider, sent requests into DHS to ask them to explain what exactly are you going to be doing at Great Lakes, and can we come look at your facility so we have a better understanding of what your operations are. And they replied, no, you can't, and in fact gave their staff the day off on the day that we went to go look at the facilities, and locked the doors and left the base. Basically, they fled the base. This is not the action of someone that's doing something legal or that they're proud of. They literally gave their people the day off, locked the doors, and left. Now, the Navy allowed us onto the post. They allowed us to tour the outside of the facility and also where they would be storing the non-lethal munitions. But DHS did not show up. And we certainly have sent the administration multiple inquiries about what they're planning on doing. Who are they bringing into Chicago? Are they planning to bring the National Guard in? They've done none of that. They've not even reached out to local law enforcement to try to coordinate. You know, if they were truly, truly interested in fighting crime, then they would work with local law enforcement and ask them, what do you need? What help do you need? And we've not gotten any communications or feedback from the administration whatsoever.
I want to ask you in your armed services role about what is a significant geopolitical meeting this past week. You had a lot of America's adversaries gathering together. Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of them in Beijing. And China and Russia seem to be deepening their work together. What do you think the signal to the United States here is?
The signal to the United States is exactly what these authoritarian regimes want to send, which is that they are the new world power, that America is losing its ground, and that they have utter disrespect for the United States. I think it was very, very clear. And it doesn't escape me the fact that once this meeting happened, which was humiliating to Donald Trump, he immediately responds by saying, well, then I'm going to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War and declare war in Chicago. This is what Donald Trump does. When something bad happens to him in the news cycle, or when the Epstein victims come together and have a very emotional press conference, he changes the topic and distracts us by saying things like, I'm going to send ICE into Chicago.
Esta es una administración sin ley. No se rige por ningún tipo de verdad, ni por ningún tipo de resultado político que desee obtener. Salvo, obviamente, enriquecer a Donald Trump, derrotar a los liberales. Pero bueno, yo acabo de cumplir con mi misión, que es informarte como lo hago absolutamente todos los días. Como siempre te digo, para mí lo más importante es tu opinión y me encantaría que la pongas en los comentarios. Además, si te gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.